Everyone feared the billionaire, but the new Janitor single. Dad made a difference when he stepped in. Marcus Hayes had worked at Hargrove Towers for exactly 3 days when everything changed. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments to change lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories. Also, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? He was a single father of 2 young children, Emma, aged 7, and little Jake, who had just turned 5. And every single morning, he woke up at 4 in the morning to pack their school lunches, drop them at his neighbor Mrs. Peterson's house, and rush to his janitor job at the most prestigious corporate building in the entire city. The pay was modest, barely enough to cover rent and groceries, but Marcus never complained, never frowned, and never made anyone feel like he was suffering, because in his heart, he believed that honest work was dignified work, no matter what the title on your badge said. The other employees at Hargrove Towers knew one thing above all else: never, under any circumstances, cross the path of Mr. Vincent Hargrove himself. Vincent Hargrove was a billionaire who had built his empire from the ground up, and somewhere along the way, he had developed a reputation for being cold, ruthless, and completely intolerant of mistakes. His voice alone could silence an entire floor of 200 employees. His glare could make a senior executive's hands shake like leaves in a storm. People whispered about him in the break rooms, avoided eye contact in the elevators, and practically held their breath whenever his private floor sent a memo down to the lower offices. Marcus had heard all the stories, of course, but he simply nodded politely and went back to mopping his floors and wiping down the conference room tables, thinking about what he would cook for Emma and Jake's dinner that evening. On the 4th morning, Marcus arrived early to clean the executive boardroom before the biggest shareholder meeting of the year. It was a gathering that Mr. Hargrove had reportedly been preparing for 6 months straight, involving major investors from 3 different countries, who were flying in specifically to sign a deal worth over $400 million. The pressure in the building was almost visible, like a thick fog hanging in every hallway. Marcus cleaned quietly and efficiently, polishing the long mahogany table until it reflected the ceiling, lights like a mirror, straightening every chair with precise care, and emptying every single waste bin without making a sound. He was just finishing up when he noticed something on the floor near the corner cabinet, a small crumpled paper, easily overlooked, partially tucked beneath the cabinet's leg. Most people would have swept it into the trash without a second glance, but something made Marcus pick it up carefully and open it. What he saw made him go completely still. It was a handwritten set of numbers, a financial summary with calculations, and at the bottom, in red ink, there were 2 words circled aggressively: account discrepancy. Marcus was no accountant, but he had spent 12 years before this job working as a financial analyst at a small firm before the company collapsed and his wife passed away, and life had reshaped itself entirely around him. He understood immediately what he was looking at. Someone had found a major error in the investment figures, and this note had been either accidentally dropped or deliberately hidden. His heart began to beat faster. The shareholder meeting was in 40 minutes. He stood there holding the note, knowing full well that walking into the executive floor uninvited was something that could easily get him fired on the spot, especially as a new employee, especially as the janitor. He thought about Emma and Jake, about Mrs. Peterson waiting for him to pay last month's small debt, about the rent due on Friday. Then he thought about what it meant to be a man who looked his children in the eyes every night, and he folded the note neatly, put it in his breast pocket, took a deep breath, and walked to the elevator. The executive floor receptionist looked at him like he had arrived from another planet entirely. Before she could speak, the boardroom doors swung open and Vincent Hargrove himself stepped out, surrounded by 3 assistants, his face carved from stone and his eyes sharp as cut glass. The entire hallway went silent. Marcus stepped forward without flinching, met the billionaire's eyes calmly and said clearly, "Sir, I believe this belongs to someone in your team and it may be important for your meeting today." He held out the folded note. Hargrove stared at him for a long, charged moment, then took the paper. As his eyes moved across the page, the stone expression slowly cracked, and something shifted in his face. First surprise, then sharp focus, then something that looked almost like relief. He turned immediately to his chief financial officer and snapped 3 rapid instructions. Within 20 minutes, the error had been identified, corrected, and the meeting proceeded on solid, accurate ground. The $400 million deal was signed before noon. 3 hours later, Marcus was pushing his cleaning cart down the second-floor corridor when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around to find Vincent Hargrove standing there alone, without a single assistant, for the first time Marcus had ever seen. The billionaire looked at him for a moment, then said quietly, "What's your name?" Marcus told him. Hargrove nodded slowly and said, "In 30 years of business, most people on my own payroll didn't have the courage you showed today. I won't forget it." He walked away, and Marcus stood there for a moment, then smiled softly to himself, thinking about Emma and Jake, and went back to work. Because that is what real strength looks like. Not a title, not a fortune, but a quiet heart that chooses to do right even when it costs everything. If this story moved your heart, please show your love by giving a like, sharing it with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribing to our channel, Kindness True Stories, where every story reminds us that ordinary people do extraordinary things every single day.